It's been 2 years since EA ceased updates for Battlefront 2, and as sad as I am that we didn't get all the characters or planets imaginable, I'd be remiss if I said that we didn't end up with a damn solid game. Say what you will about the microtransactions, the lack of arcade points, loot boxes, or just EA as a publisher in general, because God knows that I have my issues with them, but DICE, despite being given an uphill battle, managed to make one of the best looking, most replayable Star Wars games ever. There's a reason that I've been playing this semi-consistently for the past 5 years or so. Both offline arcade and Heroes vs. Villains have taken years of my life away. However, we've all kind of ignored one of the best selling points of this game, that being the single-player campaign. Which is odd, considering that the lack of single-player content was a big reason why Battlefront 2015 received mixed reviews and died off so quickly. So, does the campaign hold up? Is it a hidden gem? No. Battlefront 2, despite being a great game, has one of the most milquetoast, by-the-number story modes I've ever seen in a Star Wars game. Now let's be fair and start off with the stuff that I like. The story itself is set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, which is great. The first Battlefront only stuck to the original trilogy, which felt like a bit of a slap in the face to fans of both the prequels and The Force Awakens. This is much more holistic in terms of tying together all portions of the fanbase. It also does a great job of establishing the canonical outcome of Return of the Jedi since the EU has been, snapped from existence. It both reintroduces new unique planets, as well as reimagines some old underrepresented ones, like Naboo, which I don't think that we've seen very much of outside of the prequel trilogy. The entire story is about Iden Versio, the leader of an elite group of Imperial soldiers, slowly becoming disillusioned with the Empire and eventually defecting. Don't worry, I will come back to that. I do appreciate the original concept though. The Battlefront series was built off of the very idea of focusing on the troopers amidst big moments in the films. The campaigns in the pandemic games were a little more than recreations of the films, just from the perspective of the Empire or the Rebellion. So with this, there's an entirely unique perspective that can be explored, an original cast of characters who can go off to do their own thing, while also having small moments that tie into the Skywalker saga. And to be fair, there's lots of interesting set pieces. Escaping a rebel carrier, destroying an AT-ST, breaking into a rebel carrier and then destroying it, escaping the Empire in an AT-AT, flying the Millennium Falcon over Takodana, and finally seeing the Battle of Jakku. That last one is actually one of the best missions in the series. It's dynamic, the goals are constantly changing, and there's equal time spent in flight as well as on the ground. The cloud car moment on Bespin is also fucking hilarious. The opening mission when you're escaping a rebel ship is one of my favorite moments in a Star Wars game. It's fast, it's fun, and it sets the ideal tone for the game and its narrative. That Iden is an elite soldier who will do anything for the Empire. It also helps that the game itself is already fun to play thanks to DICE. The revamped card system is much more streamlined than the first game and is fun to customize. Weapons have a nice variety to their use case, the shooting feels fast and responsive, and the ability to switch between first and third person is maintained without losing anything whatsoever. That's all I got. Yes, we have to talk about the rest of the game. I want to make this very clear. Iden Versio isn't a bad character. The story just wasn't made with her character and story in mind. She switches sides extremely quickly, going from a dedicated commander of her own fleet to a rebel within 2 fucking hours. I'd say that it's a world record if it already wasn't beaten by squadrons. To be fair, I liked the concept that Iden's father is an admiral, making you question whether or not she's a part of the Empire because she believes in it or because she was born into it. I also like how Iden and Hask argue over who's at fault for the destruction of the Death Star, which shows that seed of doubt very early on. And the mission where the Emperor orders them to destroy their homeworld of Vardos is an interesting way to get both her and Del to switch sides. Same with the latter fighting alongside Luke on Pilio, slowly learning how the Empire was built on lies, which is my favorite part of the game. However, while it may sound like there's a lot of setup, that's all that there really is. The campaign just speedruns the Imperial section of the game. By the 4th mission, you've already boarded a rebel ship, destroyed it, hung out with Luke fucking Skywalker, defected from the Empire, and piloted an AT-AT. By the 4th hour, we're already finding Iden's dad on Jakku, and the game only ends 20 minutes later. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Iden's entire goal when she switches sides is to save her dad, which is noble. However, each and every scene we see of her father, he's an asshole who shows no love whatsoever. character, save for the ending. Like, I get what you're trying to do, but this man's a dick. This game is so cookie cutter that there's even a mission where Del and Aiden pretend to be stormtroopers and make jokes about when they used to be a part of the Empire. Oh, I'm sorry, you mean an hour ago? Motive, who's working on an Iron Man game that literally just got announced as I'm writing this, had never developed anything before Battlefront 2's campaign. Now, it wasn't an up-and-coming studio when they were given a chance to work on the license. The founder and former executive Jane Raymond produced the early Assassin's Creed games and even directed Assassin's Creed Unity and Far Cry 4? That is okay. And designer Kim Swift worked on Valve games like Left 4 Dead. So, Ubisoft jokes aside, there's obviously some heavy hitters at the studio when they were given this opportunity. However, having star power doesn't mean that your project is an automatic hit, because Battlefront 2 is the exact kind of campaign I complained about in my review of Combat Evolved. It often feels like a bunch of multiplayer maps with random enemy placements strewn about. The confusing and frustrating part is that many of these maps are made only for the single-player story, and yet they use them in the most boring ways, like Protect Del or Protect Del. While the gameplay is great, I do have some slight issues. The checkpoint system is incredibly spotty. If you die, you're often sent back to the previous objective, regardless of the fact that you've already fucking completed it. The AI is pretty much brain dead even on higher difficulties. The only difference is that Aiden can die easier, which is not how hard difficulties work. There isn't even a dodge roll at all like there is in multiplayer. Like, no matter who you play as, you just end up crouching, which makes no fucking sense. But all in all, the gameplay part of the campaign is fine. It's the same as the multiplayer done by DICE. The problem lies in the story and the design. The worst part of Battlefront 2's campaign is that it's less treated like Aiden's story and more of an elongated tutorial level, getting players used to the different maps, vehicles, and heroes. Pilot this AT-AT, AT-ST, TIE Fighter, or X-Wing. Play as Luke, Han, Leia, Lando, or Kylo fucking Ren. One of the missions even straight up copies one of Battlefront 1's training sessions. I mean, to be fair, some of these make sense within the confines in the story, but others just don't. While the series was entirely focused on troopers in the beginning, eventually playable heroes were included in the original Battlefront 2, and over time became the focus of the franchise, with heroes versus villains being one of the most popular modes in both of EA's titles. And this prevalence even spread to the campaigns. The integration of hero characters in the main story isn't without merit. It makes for some of the best moments, like the entire Luke mission on Pilio. I'm all for fan service as long as the story can stand well on its own, and as I've established, Battlefront 2 doesn't. It takes an interesting concept shoved into an already short game and starts taking away even more time from the main story for Lando running around on Celeste. I paid $30 for this. The missions with the legacy characters are fun, so much so that I wish that there was an entire game centered on Luke or Leia. But as a result, Aiden and Del feel like background characters in their own story. When the two of them get together at the end of the game, it feels unfinished. Don't get me wrong, it's set up multiple times in some not so subtle ways, but there still just wasn't enough time to back this moment up. Then, once they have a child and eventually die, it all feels forced. Which is odd, considering that what we're seeing is unique to the canon. We've never seen an original Star Wars character live out such a fulfilled life in a video game. This was the chance to tell an original story that could rival one of the films. But it quickly turned into a fan service fest with gameplay that's less focused on fun and more about getting the audience used to multiplayer. You might have noticed that I kinda skipped over the DLC Resurrection, but that's with good reason. It's a boring expansion that for some reason was held until The Last Jedi came out. It kind of expands on the original story, but not in a particular interesting way. The original game ended with a time jump to after The Force Awakens, where Hask finds Del and kills him. And the expansion is all about Aiden, Shriv, and Zay, Aiden and Del's daughter, trying to get revenge on Hask, as well as find the schematics to the Dreadnought. It's less about the ending of Aiden's life or passing the torch to Zay, and more so about setting up The Last Jedi. Although they don't even try to shoehorn Rey or Poe in there, or even Finn. which is interesting considering that they've used every other character in some way, shape, or form. This is the one case where I'd want those missions to break up the monotony. Also, why the fuck wasn't Poe in the game? That makes no sense. After 3 very monotonous missions, Resurrection ends on yet another cliffhanger, one that's thankfully been ignored. Had the campaign spent more time telling an interesting story surrounding Iden and Del turning against all they've known their entire life, I think I would have enjoyed Battlefront 2 a lot more. As is, it's a disappointing campaign with some moments that are fun, but quickly become stale, leaving the campaign as just a mode on the menu that you'll never touch. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I've literally been thinking about making a review of Battlefront 2 since I played it all the way back in 2017, 2018. Whenever I played it, I just get so fucking bored, and the idea of recording and editing an entire video on it would just defeat me, and I just delete my footage. So this is yet another white whale that I can just cross off my checklist and move on with my fucking life. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next time. Later, kids. Have a good night.